Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So one of the biggest issues that keeps coming up is like the people that constantly say, look, I'm trying to memorize the Quran, and I'm trying to pray at night, or I'm trying to memorize Hadith, or all these different types of actions that the people are saying that they're trying to do, but they can't stay motivated. Because what happens is generally people, they listen to a lecturer, somebody who's giving a muhadara, and he gives a nice talk about a certain issue. Maybe it's about the importance of memorization of the Quran. Maybe it's the importance of memorization of Hadith. So the people, they hear this and then they go back and they want to try, they get all hyped up and they're all excited, and they go home and they grab the Quran and they start reading and they try to start memorizing, maybe Juz Amma, Juz Tabarak, Juz called Sami', whatever the case may be. Or maybe he gets all hyped up about the memorization of Hadith, and now he goes home and he looks up Al-Arba'in An-Nawawiyah, he orders it, and before it even gets to his house from the mail, he's already lost the motivation for it. Because he's dealing with motivation. He's relying on motivation. And the people got to realize, man, that the motivation that you feel from these talks, it can only take you so far. It can only take you so far. And a person that relies on motivation will fail every single time to get anything done. You will never complete anything. It's the person's ability to push himself through all the difficulties, through all the trials and all the struggles. And that's that self-discipline. That's what's going to get you through to the end. That's going to make you do the things that you have to do when you don't want to do them. And that's what you need. Motivation is going to get you excited to do something. Now that you're excited to do something, anybody that's excited to do something will find ease in doing that thing. It's easy to do something that you want to do. It's easy to do something that you enjoy doing. If you go outside and play sports, it's easy. You enjoy it. But now if you have to go and practice every day and train every day for 6 hours, now that sport doesn't seem so appealing to you anymore. Why do you think so few people end up becoming pro? And this is just an analogy of sports, and this is the worst example, because it's just a physical example. But when we talk about the students of knowledge, you look at the people who become successful in studying. The most successful people, when we look at the ulama, of the past, the Imam Bukharis, the Imam Muslims, the Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyahs, and Imam Ahmed's, and the Ibn al-Qayyim's, and the Ibn Kathir's, and all these individuals, the Hafiz ibn Hajar's, what separated them from their peers? Did they have more intelligence? Did they memorize faster? The majority of the times you'll see with like Bukhari, and even though Bukhari had a very strong memory, I'm pretty sure that you might have found other people that had a quicker memory in the time of Bukhari. But Bukhari was persistent. And even when they asked him about how he memorized all the hadith, and he said, Mudawamat an-nadhar. He said consistently looking at the books, being in the books and reading them over and over and over and over and over again. That's it. He gave you the formula for success. But that takes self-discipline. You cannot do that with motivation, because motivation is going to stop as soon as you run into your first difficulty. That first difficulty, once you hit that first roadblock in your studies, and everybody will. I don't care how easy something is, you're going to hit a roadblock somewhere. Somewhere. I remember like one time when this happened to me twice that I could really, really, really remember. One time when I was memorizing Surah Al-Baqarah, when I got to the 7th page, I was memorizing. I was like, this is easy. I got to like the 7th or 8th page. I can't remember which page it was exactly, the number. And I just couldn't, it wouldn't stick. I kept reading it and reading it and reading it. And what would normally take me 500 times ended up with this page taking me almost 1,000. I had to read it almost 1,000 times before it finally stuck in my head. It finally stuck. And then it ended up being the page that I had memorized better than every other page that I actually memorized. And the same thing when I was memorizing the Mu'allaqah of Imr al-Qais, which is a poetry from Jahiliyyah. I was memorizing the whole thing. It was easy. And I got to like maybe the 65th line, and all of a sudden, boom, it just wouldn't stick. I read those lines more than 1,000 times. It happens. And if you're only pushing yourself with motivation, you don't make yourself do it, then you quit. You're just done. And even me, I was like, oh man, I guess poetry's not for me. I can't even remember. But I forget, and this is what happens when we get through those difficulties, is that we forget all the other things that we did before that. Like, look, man, you just memorized 65 lines. You can memorize these 3 lines. You're having problems with 3 lines of poetry, and you're going to give up. But that's the thing. I had to push myself push myself to continue and continue and continue. because that motivation wasn't there when I hit that difficulty. When I'm sitting there reading those 3 lines over and over and they're not sticking in my memory, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? What sins have I committed? What have I done? You know, that now I can't even memorize 3 lines of poetry. And it happens. It happens in the Arabic studies. It happens in the memorization of the Quran. It happens in the Hadith. It happens in everything that you're going to do. It's going to happen in Talib al-Ilm. And why do you think a lot of people, when they go out, and I remember back in the days in Damaj, how many people will we get that come to Damaj and they can't even make it 3 months, 4 months, because they were relying on motivation. They didn't really have a real goal or objective that they were trying to achieve. And they didn't have the drive to push them towards that goal. They got motivated. They heard a student. He came back from Damaj. He spoke in the masjid. They said, wow, I want to go to Damaj. They went to Damaj and they found out how difficult it was, and then they gave up. They gave up. So this is the reality of the situation. That motivation is only it's going to let you down every single time. It's good to get you started, but don't rely on it. Don't put your trust in it. And just like, it's similar to like drinking a cup of coffee. You know, when you first drink that first cup of coffee, what does it do? It hypes you up, like you get all hyper. Then the second day you drink a cup of coffee, you get hyper, but it's not as hyper as you were the day before. And then at each successive day, what happens? It starts to get less. The effects of the coffee and the caffeine in your system, they start to get less and less and less, until now you have to drink double or triple the amount of coffee just to get the effects. Motivation is just like that. Motivation is just like any type of drug, or and caffeine is a drug. When you first get motivated about, memorizing the Quran, you get highly motivated. All right. Then you hear another person talk about memorizing the Quran. You'll get motivated, but it won't be like that first time. And so on and so forth, until eventually you start hearing people talk about memorizing the Quran and you don't get motivated at all. So this is the reality of the situation. That motivation is going to fail you every single time, and you're going to fail relying on motivation. You have to, number one, know what you're doing something for. You're doing it for Allah. You're doing it for, for the benefit of the Muslims, and you're doing it to bring about a change in this ummah, to bring the people back to knowledge, to call the people back to knowledge. You have an objective. You have a huge goal in mind. This is a huge goal. This is a huge objective. But now you have to have the drive. You have to have the self-discipline, and you have to make yourself do this every day and every day. And the main thing, and I'll tell you that you will never, ever, ever get anything done if you don't constantly make dua. I have never known anybody achieve anything in this religion except for that person was asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that thing every single day. Wallahi, when I was trying to go to Yemen, I made dua for the whole year before. And and Shaitan comes to me and say, look at you, 6 months, 8 months, you're making dua every single day. Please, Ya Rabbi, I want to go to Yemen. You're making dua after Salat al-Asr on Friday. You're making dua when it rains. You're making dua in the last part of the night. You're making dua after you break your fast. You're making dua all these times, but you're still in America. You're still here in America. And this is the game that Shaitan plays. And you got to push that out. And you got to keep your mind focused on the goal and the objective. Now, I'm going to continue to make dua until I get what I'm trying to achieve. I'm going to keep making dua, and I'm going to keep working towards it. Not just making dua and sitting back and like waiting for it to fall in your lap. You have to work. You have to struggle. You have to put, all the blood, sweat, and tears, as the cliche goes. But that's the reality of it. You're not going to get anything done sitting on the couch. So you have to get out there. You have to work, and you have to, and you have to push yourself on the days that you don't feel well, the days that you feel lazy. Those are the days that you get the most benefit out of what you're doing. The days that it's easy. So you don't get that much benefit from it. Because it was easy. You just breeze through it. But the times that you have to struggle and you have to repeat things and you have to sit down with a couple words that you're having trouble with, or some page that you're having trouble memorizing, or a hadith that just won't stick in your head. Those are the things that's what's gonna, those things, when you push past them, that's gonna build the strongest character in you. And that's also you're gonna find that those things that they push your memory to a different level. Allah tested you and you passed the test by the permission of Allah, but also making dua and doing isti'ana billah. Because you got to keep in mind that every single time that you start memorization and you say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, that the ba and the ba here, the harf jar, it means isti'ana. that you're doing isti'anah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every time that you say Bismillah, that you're doing this action and you know that only by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can you complete this action. You keep that in your heart and you keep making dua for it, and wallahi, you will be successful. And even if you don't achieve what you tried to achieve, but just putting your trust in Allah, making dua to Allah, doing and making isti'anah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly, you're already successful, even if you didn't finish the Quran, because you're going to see that ajr on the Day of Judgment. But the main thing is whatever you have to achieve, it's not just making dua and sitting down and relaxing. You got to get up. You got to work towards it. You want to learn the Arabic language, you got to put in the struggle. How many hours a day are you studying? How many days of the week are you studying? Oh, I'm studying 3 days a week. What is this? You understand? And you don't really want it. You know, because if you really love something, you can't take a day off from it. You can't. You know, you'll push yourself even when you're sick and you're in bed, you'll grab a book and you'll still try to benefit that day. You won't let that day slide without some type of benefit if you truly love it. So that's the reality. Stop relying on this motivation. Stop going back and trying to, it's nothing, there's nothing wrong with trying, listen to people talk about certain subjects and Islamic lectures, listen to them. But once you get motivated, you have to realize that the only thing that's going to keep you going is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first off, giving you the tawfiq. And it's, and part of that tawfiq is that you have to work. You have to put in the work. You have to do something. And you have to get up and you have to work, and you have to work every single day. Every single day. There's no days off. This is a religion. This is not a job. This is not a 9-to-5 job. So get that Western mentality out. This is something that if you really truly love it, you don't want to take a day off from it. Wallahu musta'an. Wa ilahuna subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.